Okay, it's 2 o'clock, we're live streaming, thanks for coming to the budget update. For those of you that are watching the live streaming, you can look at the city's webpage under budgeting.
Thank you, though, Chief.
See this little presentation there. Our auditors are gonna join in afterwards, so if you have a specific question to the auditors, you can ask it at that time, so take your notes and we'll do that once we're done with the presentation. You can ask questions during the presentation also. We'll get some more handouts for you, which actually has where we are so far with this year's budget, and some comparable cities that are about the same size as what we are, and handout from the police department on their percentage of the pie in the overall budget of the city. So, we'll go ahead and get started. We thought we would start first with what is a mill. Everybody talks about we get so many mills and how that's all calculated. So 1/1000th of the total property tax valuation of a taxing jurisdiction. That's what a mill is. The mill is used to allocate the cost of providing government services in proportion to taxable value of property owned by the taxpayer. Thus, if the total taxable valuation of a city is $2 million, a 1 mill levy would yield $2,000 in property tax revenue. So 2 million divided by 1,000. By the same token, if a resident has a taxable value of $5,000, a 1 mill levy on the property would yield $5 in property tax revenues. If the mill levy required to balance the city-town budget is 100 mills, the municipal property tax on the same resident would be 100 times $5 or $500, which would be added to the county, school, state mill levies. And you can see that on your tax statements. If you look on your property tax statements, go from there. We'll jump right into the general fund. The 2018 taxable valuation, $7,078,483. So as that's divided out, will equal, a mill would be $7,078.48. The mill value, well, that's the mill value. General fund mill levy, we use 97.32. So you take that, and you come up with $688,877.67 is what we ended up with last year. Out of that, fire department gets 28 mills, which is $199,198, and the airport gets 1 mill of $7,079. So where does the rest of the money come from the general fund? Property tax levies, other taxes and assessments, resort tax property relief, state entitlements, investment earnings, rent, leases, fines, forfeitures, licenses, and permits. And we ended up last year with $1,953,204. So the cash value from 17-18 was $384,030. Budget non-tax revenue in 18-19 was $880,279, which totals up to $1,264,327. You add that with the tax revenue of $688,877, and that's where you come up with the $1,953,204. Everybody good with that? Got you sneezing already. In the handouts, we gave you a list. This was a list given to us by Interstate Engineering when they were doing some research. And it just gives you some comparable cities to ours in size. And it's a very interesting mills and what's levied. And, if you want to do a little research on your own, you're more than happy to look those cities up and compare us to them. Resort tax. It's a tax at 3% collected by the businesses within the city on qualifying purchases. Special tax is used for property tax relief for residents and also generates funds to use towards maintenance capital improvements throughout the city. This was voted in by the people in 1998. Just a side note, the resort tax money has a restricted use and can only be used for items outlined in Ordinance 901. Where does the money go from the resort tax? 5% goes back to the businesses, and this is the businesses that are collecting it, they get to deduct 5% out of the 3%. 15% for tax reduction. This is used to give the city residents tax relief on their property taxes. The city collects a 1% administration fee, and 79% of that is used for capital improvements. Side note on that, capital improvement funds can only be used towards capital improvements to streets, alley, roads, municipal water system, municipal sewer system, emergency services, parks, recreational facilities. It cannot be used on salaries, supplies, etc., unless they are directly tied to the improvement and the maintenance. Yes.
May I ask you just a quick question for clarification? So that specific list, as it stands right now, my understanding, but just for the benefit of those that are watching, is because that is the list that was defined and voted, or the list that was voted on by the voters, and that is subject to change in the future to a different list if the voters want and approve differences in that, correct?
Exactly. So let's kind of break it down, what we had last year. 5% on the resort tax. 5% was $44,636. The 15% that went for property tax relief was $133,908. The 1% administration fee was $8,927, and the 79% that was used for projects and $705,252. So a very comparable town to Red Lodge is West Yellowstone. West Yellowstone is a small town of approximately 1,300 people. It is a gateway to Yellowstone Park. They also collect resort tax. Their businesses get 2.5% versus 5% give back to businesses. They give their residents 5% property tax relief versus the 15% that we give local residents for property tax relief. So they're all a little different and very easy to look up. So this is the 18-19 budget, where the resort tax money went to. We have the streets, we had plow trucks, wayfinding plan, White Avenue South project, came up to 82,800. Parks, we set aside 47,000 for future pool improvements. The police got MDTs, in-car computers, the IMC, and vehicle leases, a 3-year lease. That came to a total of 59,500. Water, we transfer 100,000 to water, and then we put forward 242,964 towards the Hagen Water project that's going on right now. The water ended up getting 342,964. Sewer, we had a transfer to sewer, 150,000. The jetter truck lease, 68,567. The force main, phase 2 is 100,000. The with a total of $318,568,000. That's what sewer was. Transfers to general fund for tax relief was $120,000. Transfer to general fund was $8,000, a total of $128,000. So, we had a reserve of $20,000. Grand total was $998,831. Transfer to resort tax, from resort tax to water sewer are used to pay for debt from past capital water and sewer projects. That's where we make those transfers.
Thank you.
So these are the capital projects, shows current projects, the past projects, the money goes to, and then the small, yellow line is what's in reserve. So, these are some projects that we have going, water treatment rebuild. Can everybody read that okay? That is fast. 12-inch water main down Highway 212, that loan amount is $543,933, and that will be paid off in 2024. Water rehab of Grant, Adams, and McGillen was $976,270. That will be paid off in 2038. The water rehab on Broadway was $648,549. That will be paid off in 2034. The sewer pond rebuild was $1,878,817. That will be paid off in 2042. Once again, the rebuild, another $1,245,220. That will be paid off in 2042. Sewer lift station and force main rehab was $940,777. Paid off in 2037. Sewer jetter truck lease, that just has an annual cost of $68,000. That should be paid off this year. Street plows and leases, those are $72,800. That will be paid off this new budget, this next budget. And the police vehicle lease is $48,000 a year. That'll be paid off in fiscal year 2021. The water treatment rehab rebuild was the water main down Highway 212 to the hospital. Grand Avenue, McGillen, first three loans were listed. Projects are in the works of being refinanced by AMCO. The sewer pond at 4.5% is being refinanced in the fall, the end of the year through SRF. What we've totaled up is we're going to end up with savings of $800,000 once we refinance these. So the end date will stay the same, but our interest rate goes down, and we'll save about $800,000 by refinancing those. So property tax versus resort tax revenue, that's pretty self-explanatory. What we get in resort tax and what we get in property tax.
Can I ask a question there?
Sure.
So does that property tax levy amount, is that pre the $100,000 approximately that gets moved from the resort tax to property tax relief, or is that after? Is that the net, or is that the gross? Does that make sense?
So as far as, we take right off the top of how many mills we can.
So so that reflects the reduction in,
property tax.
yeah.
So we collect less, correct me if I'm wrong, Lonnie, we correct less property taxes because of
The resort tax.
And that's reflected on your
Yeah.
tax statement.
Question, both the tax relief for property taxes and the payback to business owners, is that pro rata? Or is it based on revenue generation per business?
So the 5% business owners keep is off the 3%
That they generate?
And does that show in your collection amounts, or generally does not show in your collection?
It doesn't show it.
It's not part of the 848.
No, no, because we don't,
You never see
we
it.
never see it, no, they take that off the top.
So, needless to say that the resort tax takes a significant burden off the city residents outside of the 15% used for tax relief. Resort tax funds are used to complete large capital projects that would normally have to be paid out of general fund or enterprise water and sewer funds. This is just a bar graph of the last 3 years. See, that's a little hard for you to read, but the first line, the first light green line is fiscal year 16-17. The next dark green line is 17-18, and the yellow line is 18-19. Also need to mention that court and attorney are lumped together on that. They're legal. Pie chart of general fund budget. Library gets 9%, council, clerk and council get 13% of that, planning gets 6%, legal gets 9%, police gets 36%, county dispatch is 2%, fire is 12%, and public works is 13%. That's the general fund.
Bill, what's included in clerk and council? Is that
So that's the
just
clerk's
the
budget
front office and
and then council's budget. And mayor, well, I'm in there too.
Yeah.
This is just some comparisons that we ran. Columbus, Montana has a population of 1,990. They receive about 243,248 from the Stillwater mine. In 17-18, their police department has 5 officers and 1 chief. The PD budget runs 664,450. West Yellowstone, which is a resort tax town, has a population of 1,300. It is a resort town, receives 4,097,493 from resort tax. The police department has 5 officers, 1 chief. Police department budget is 581,742. Compared to Red Lodge with a population of 2,286, receives 877,448 from resort tax. In 17-18, we have 7 officers, 1 chief. And the police budget here is 619,570. Yes, Diane.
I just wanted to clarify on West Yellowstone, they collect $4 million in resort tax.
Yes.
People need to be aware that they tax everything. And they drop their mills like 50. I mean, it's they only collect 88 mills from each resident. But they tax everything that's in West Yellowstone.
When you say everything, what do you mean?
You go purchase something that's not just
All
luxury.
grocery store items, everything?
Well, I don't know if food is, but
Okay.
toilet paper.
Oh, yes,
no.
I think food's exempt in the law, yeah.
Food, yeah. So all of their clothing, all of their.
Mayor, do you know, and interestingly enough, I stopped in West Yellowstone the other day and had some conversations. So if I'd have known this homework was already done, I could have saved the trip. I was already there. Do you know if they use a percentage, did they pass their resort tax in such a way that it allows them to help fund the police department? Or is there not necessarily an association between that?
I can tell you the majority of the fire department budget is paid out of
The majority of their general fund is budgeted out of resort tax.
So again, that has to do with how the resort tax was passed and what services people want to get from that. And it's a tangent, I don't want to dive into it here, but there is, I think the verbiage that we heard expressed very well articulated in the past is there were some people who felt betrayed in that our budget they didn't feel was necessarily being used the way they thought it was going to be used when they voted for the resort tax in the past. And so I think it's very important, I'll go on the record as saying, I think it's very important that we pass the resort tax again, based on the numbers that the mayor showed. But I think we should also look at it, and the mayor has put together a committee that will be doing so to make sure that we use it and set ourselves up to be able to use it in the way people want. So if they want to have enhanced police services, enhanced parks, enhanced you name it, that needs to be part of the discussion that we make sure, because here's an example where they get a lot more visitors than we do, but then they've chosen to use that to give them the services that they need and feel are appropriate.
Mr. Mayor, so this West Yellowstone budget, that 581, that a portion or all of it comes out of resort tax? What, does anybody know? I don't know. So how much of our police department, because this is the amount for the general fund, but they also have about $60,000 out of resort tax, don't they, for vehicles and equipment?
No, actually, it wasn't that much.
48,000, I believe, sir.
And then there was equipment too.
This year it's.
Well, this year it's going to be 48, but, and last year I believe it was about 60.
And again, that's driven by what did they pass, maybe what we didn't, but we should look at and consider.
I don't know. Whatever. That's a different discussion. But I just wanted to make sure that this reflects all of the, if that is what comes out of their combined budgets, general and resort, we should also put what comes out of our combined budget.
And I think the comparisons, Mayor, Lonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, the police department budget for West Yellowstone, for the sake of this slide, we can compare it to Red Lodge, for that one line item. The resort tax we can compare on that one line item. That does not suggest any sort of correlation between the individual line items for each town.
These numbers came out of the general fund, not the resort tax budget. This is general fund.
So like I said, this, there's no correlation between the four lines within each town. It's just four particular variables with three reference points.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you go back one slide, please?
Sure.
Just based on the number of officers and chiefs and the cost per unit for each one of those employees, why is ours so much less than, let's say, West Yellowstone?
Our officers, throughout, I haven't checked on the wages, but I would say that our wages are lower than theirs.
Because it's considerably less,
It is.
$20,000+ per person.
Mhm.
Okay, maybe we should look into that.
And to correct that, it's 6 officers, 1 chief. We had a total of 7 officers, including our chief.
Wow, it's even better.
Well, and in West Yellowstone, and then he told me that they had 4 officers, including the chief, last week when I was there too. But they are looking to change that and increase theirs right away, but.
And are these numbers aren't the budget numbers, correct? These are the expenditures for Red Lodge?
That was what was budget,
Because our budget last year was, 649,000 for the police budget.
And at the end of the year,
Oh,
they turn
actually,
back.
maybe
So it
that
takes
is-
the
that is the
expenditures.
expenditures.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
okay.
So
Sorry.
that,
Because
that-
the budget for this year is 677,000.
I believe the chief, how much money did you give back from last year?
We returned to the citizens of Red Lodge about $40,000 off my budget. So last year's budget, you asked me, we wanted a little bit more because we knew we were gonna be short officers. And you asked, I asked for a little bit more in case we incurred overtime, and I promised you I'd get that back to you. 25,000 of that is in wages. The remainder of that 40,000 comes from the rest of our budget. So I just want to assure the citizens and the council that we were very thrifty in what we spent. We didn't go out with an open checkbook and buy things that we just wanted. We bought things that our officers needed, and I was very thrifty in trying to make sure that officers were supplied with what they needed to do the work. But we also were conscious of the budget.
As I think all departments are too.
Yes. Absolutely.
so I'm still confused, is that an asset or a liability I'm looking at on the bottom line?
I think what I heard is for Red Lodge, it's an actual
Asset,
and expenditures.
so it's a liability.
It's a liability.
Okay.
That was
I'm
the money
completely
actually
confused.
spent,
I'm
correct, Chief
confused.
Wells?
That was what it's been.
Okay. I don't know, if Lonnie could speak, or if it would be fair to ask her to speak as to whether for Columbus and West Yellowstone, if that's actual or budgeted. My guess is it would probably be budgeted, it's whatever number they gave her when she did the research.
And just for clarification, the bottom slide for Red Lodge is actually 6 officers and 1 chief.
Right.
We can adjust the numbers, but I'm just more, if one's an asset and one's a liability, what's the use of the slide?
Again, it's just 4 data, like I said, to me, in your mind, look at this as 4 different slides. So pretend that this slide said population, and it only contained population for Columbus, West Yellowstone, and Red Lodge. And then we clicked on the next slide, and it said, how much did we get from resort tax, and it compared those 3 variables. So don't try to associate the 4 bullets underneath each location. It's just trying to put a lot of information on one slide. So the police department budget compares only to the police department budget to the police department budget.
We were just showing comparables as far as that. This is general fund. Where does the money go? This pretty much shows that 61% of it goes towards salary, and the 39% goes towards expenses. The city actually splits wages through each fund based on work each employee does. In small towns, all employees wear a lot of hats. We are trying to reflect this in where they are paid from. When employees are doing work for water and sewer enterprise funds, the general fund, people's money should be used to pay for their doing work. More wages have been transferred back to the general fund at the request of council, but this is not because we have been doing it incorrectly. We are audited annually and can assure you that wages are not being incorrectly allocated. An enterprise fund should operate such as a business, and it should pay for the wages and work that these employees do for that fund. For example, council and mayor work for all funds. They work on budget resolutions, ordinances, and work on various issues where their salaries come from, should reflect the work that they do. What are we doing to help? Like I said, refinancing current loans to get better interest rates, reinvest money to increase interest revenues. We've been taking a lot of money and putting it into the STIP, which gives us a little better interest rate, which I think we've been doing it for a while, but we've gone from interest from, about $200 a month to well over $1,000 a month by changing it over to the STIP.
And STIP is a state investment program that municipalities can put money into. So we had money that was put into CDs, and as those CDs came up for renewal, we then transferred it over to this with the better interest rate on that money, so that we're reissuing CDs on it, so.
The Jetter truck lease payment, that will free up about $68,000 in resort tax. The snowplow trucks is going to release about $72,000. Of course, the cemetery board creation, that's taking the cemetery out of the city's general fund. What we're looking at is creating special districts, street districts, lighting districts, and at this time, we're putting aside money to pay off debt. The short-term investment program, the STIP, interest rates are incredibly high right now, so I see these mature, like Bonnie was saying, we're moving that money around. And of course, the money freed up from the Jetter trucks is going to help also. Micah.
How much money is currently put aside to pay off debt? How much is in that fund?
This year, we're trying to put $820,000 out of sewer to pay off that debt that's matures in 2043, 2042. We have that in the budget for this year.
That's just accelerated debt payoff.
Right. We're really trying to get it so we can just get it paid off. Get under 20,000, is a big step. So let's, like I said, the auditors have reviewed this, and this was something that they wanted to have in there also, plus us. There's, maintenance districts, water maintenance districts, legal mechanism by which property owners within a specific district can vote to assess themselves for the purpose of financing special benefit services, including maintenance of streets, street lights. These special benefit services are provided at a level over and above the standard city general fund benefit. So what those do is it gives us a little bit more money in the general fund by creating these districts. And what kind of special benefits do MADS funds? MADS usually fund maintenance services and in limited circumstances, construction and installation of capital improvement projects. MADS are typically used to provide funding for higher level of maintenance services. And that can be used to provide funding for construction and installation on a limited basis. The benefits. Method of appropriating the assessment is based upon the relative special benefit derived by the property in each maintenance district over and above the general benefit conferred on real estate located in each maintenance district or to the public at large. Assets parcels within each maintenance district receive special benefit for the maintenance and operation of the improvement, particular and district benefits provided to parcels within each maintenance district. So, improving the livability, appearance, and desirability of properties within the boundaries of each maintenance district, ensuring that improvements do not reach a state of deterioration or disrepair so as to be materially detrimental to properties within each maintenance district. The proper maintenance of the landscaping ornamental structures, facilities also reduce property-related crimes within vandalism, especially with vandalism, against property within each maintenance district. Providing beautification, shade, overall enhancement of properties within each maintenance district. Lighting district is benefiting from street and or alley lights are assessed for the installation, utility costs, and maintenance of individual districts. Street lighting in buildings is provided through neighborhood street lighting districts to increase nighttime safety and security. These districts are created under state law and are officially called special improvement light maintenance districts. Can be created through petition with the signatures of over 50% of property owners in an area requesting lights, where a district can be initiated by the city as long as fewer than 50% of the property owners file written protest. Streets district. Every parcel within the city limits is assessed as street maintenance by square footage. Every property, including undeveloped parcels, benefit from the access providing public right-of-way. Street maintenance includes, but is not limited to, sprinkling, graveling, oiling, chip sealing, seal coat, overlaying, treatment, cleaning, sweeping, flushing snow, and ice removal, and leaf debris. Transparency. Section 8, the right to participation. The public has the right to expect government agencies to afford such reasonable opportunity for citizens' participation in the operation of the agency prior to the final decision as may be provided by law. Joining on council work sessions, council meetings. This is the public's opportunity to participate and have their opinions and voices heard. Reach out to your council member representatives to have your opinion and voice heard one-on-one. Section 9, the right to know. No person shall be deprived of right to examine documents or to observe the deliberation of all public bodies or agencies and state government and its subdivision except in cases in which the demand of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure. Documents are available on the city's website. Notices, updates on Facebook, Google Groups, emailed us. Meetings are streamlined on YouTube. Public is always welcome at City Hall. If you have any other ideas on how we can be more transparent, please let us know. Some of the community believe there is a lack of transparency, and the terms have been used loosely in various communication forums. The city and its staff have made every effort to make our local government as transparent as possible. Our website holds a great deal of information and is readily available to our residents to view at their leisure. The year-to-date budget is updated and placed online so that the public can see where we stand and how the money is being spent. The budget itself and documents created to easily understand the budget is also available on the website. City council meeting agendas, minutes, work documents, etc. are all also available online. Social media and email list is also used to post important notices, updates, including dates and times of meetings, to encourage public participation. The meetings are live streamed. In most municipalities, this amount of information is not readily available to the public and has to be acquired through FOIAs. The city is leading the way in forms of technology and communication when it comes to small, rural, local governments. We take pride in where we are compared to other cities. And that is it. One other thing, the public is welcome to utilize the various avenues of information such as the website, Google Groups, Facebook, YouTube, or stop by City Hall where any information can be requested. You want to take just a little break? I need a drink of water. And we'll get the auditor on the phone so you can all ask him questions.
It's up to the discretion of, and like the proposal, to know that process, I guess.
I wouldn't have wanted
I couldn't find the streaming thing.
Yeah, they got it streaming on like an old tape or something.
When I was out of town, That's where, like baseball, and then the ball.
Yeah, we sure can. This is Bill.
Hi, Bill. This is Kurt with Olin and Associates.
Hi, Kurt. Well, we've gone through the paperwork and the PowerPoint presentation. We have probably 20-some people here that have some questions for you, or you want to start out with something?
No, I'm just answer any questions that maybe we can help with that haven't been covered already, so go ahead.
Questions from the public? Nothing?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may, Becky.
I keep hearing from different sources and different people that the city's broke and that the staff's mismanaged the money by moving things from water and sewer over to the general fund. Is that true?
Kurt, did you hear that?
Well, I caught pieces of it. It's something that you've been hearing that the city is broke, and then from there forward, I missed last word, something about water and sewer.
Go ahead, Becky.
Um, Hey Kurt, this is Becky, the city attorney, and
All right, Becky.
what I was saying is, I keep hearing from different people, different sources, that, our city's broke, and that the staff has mismanaged the money by taking money from water and sewer to keep the city afloat. Could you explain to the public, whether that's true or not true?
Well, you gotta keep in mind that I don't have any idea what is going on with the 2019 books. All I know is what happened in, up to 2018, because we have, we did the audit for 2018. With that being said, I can't, the cash reports and the budget reports, all of those are available to the public, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm assuming that none of those funds have a negative balance in them?
No.
Or negative fund balance, anything to that effect, is that correct?
No negative fund balance.
Negative fund balances,
None.
right, so, in that respect, and then no, the city is not broke.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to Becky?
You can respond.
Well, it's in correlation with her statement, or her question.
Can you hear him okay, Kurt?
nope, like I said, it's mostly echoey, and I apologize, because I'm on my cell phone out, in rural Montana,
This
so
is-
it comes and goes.
Not necessarily a question for you, but just maybe a clarification in regard to the question that Becky asked you. I've heard the same rumors, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with the current administration. It could have been previous administrations misallocating the money for the last 10 or 15 years. So those statements, I don't think, are directed at anybody that is currently employed at City Hall.
Okay, and that's probably a fair statement, and I can't honestly attest to what had happened years and years ago, because we've only been involved with the audit for the last 2 years, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's our second year. So what had happened in the past, I'm not sure, but I do know that they're not broke now. And at least, based on the last year's audit, they've, taken steps to address some of the allocation and the resort tax issues. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I guess I could attest to.
I guess I would like to say as a public that if somebody is making these statements and it has to do with past administrations, please state it that way. Because, sometimes the way that it's stated, it puts us onto the current administration. And,
Right. Well, that's kind of, everybody's got just like short-term vision as far as what's happening now, will be attested to the people that are in charge and all this stuff. Maybe if they've had concerns, that groundwork was laid years and years ago.
And I would like to add
Is
it.
that fair?
Yes.
Okay,
I would like to add that I think that I don't think that there's been any, now we're past intentional, I hate to use the word misappropriation, but for lack of a better word, or bad practices that were intentional and malicious. I do think we, as well as past generations, continue to learn, and one of the ways we do that is through the audit, where the auditors come in and say, hey, this is the way that's been done in the past, and this is the way it ought to be done in the future. And we have seen, over the last couple of years, we've seen some changes in the way we do things for that reason and for that purpose. And the mayor, I believe it was, earlier gave an example where some decisions were made to allocate salaries a little bit differently. In some cases, it was because when we looked into it deeper, we determined that the time was being allocated differently than maybe it has in the past. And in some cases, it was done just to eliminate any appearance of gap. So it was just to eliminate concerns and possibilities. And so like I said, I think this is a continued ongoing process. I can certainly speak for myself, but I think I also speak fairly comfortably for all of my fellow council members and the administration, that I think everybody's trying to make sure that we're doing this right and that it's out there. And that's part of the reason the information is being shared. If people have questions, raise them. I would second the do it constructively, and raise the question constructively. But if there's issues and concerns, I haven't been translated yet, so I'm going to assume I'm not perfect. I'm still here. So we are all still learning on a regular basis.
oh, definitely, and there's a continual transition between council members and elected officials where, you know, there's different experience levels on the board, and somebody new comes in, takes a while to get up to speed on what's going on, so there's always, like some fluctuation. And I think sometimes you are bound by the administration's past on how they did things and allocated resources, and a lot of what has happened, and not just saying for the city of Red Lodge, but a lot of cities we deal with that had, because they kicked a lot of maintenance down the road, and using the water and sewer funds to, I guess, augment the general fund because it's harder to raise taxes, but it's not as hard to increase water fees. So that's the budgetary issues, at least from our standpoint. When we do an audit, when I ask, okay, how are you allocating your salary? Why are you charging these things off to the enterprise funds? And because that's where the money is, it's not an acceptable answer, at least from our audit standpoint. You've got to have a legit reason for charging it off to those utility funds. So, and I think you said, I believe Red Lodge is making some progress in the last few years about getting some of those allocation issues worked out, at least when they first did it.
Can you give us just a quick overview on what your audit consists of?
That's, I guess, you're gonna have to narrow that down a little bit, what the audit consists of. It's an audit is it's pretty encompassing procedures for it, like, disclosures and whether the financial statements are clearly stated. Mostly it's all geared towards the presentation of financial statements, and that there's a fair representation of the city of Red Lodge's finances. We just go through pretty long process to make sure that that is actually true.
Okay, Teresa.
Okay, so if the audit report, you take a look at last year's audit report, you take a look at the numbers in there, you know, the cash balances, the liabilities, all of your reserves, and those, if they're in there, then when we go behind that they're excluded, there's no change for true. Okay.
I have another question for you.
Hey, Kurt.
That's, I guess what I said is, nobody's making the numbers up, Lonnie's not making the numbers up. I mean, they're available to the public on a month-to-month, or even an on-demand basis, right?
Yes.
So, you know, if somebody has some concerns about the cash balances or the fee balances, and just come in and run those at any time.
So I have a question related to, you know, the
the methods there. With, resort tax, there's been quite a big hiccup here because of the reinterpretation of the resort tax usage, and it specifically for parks maintenance. And what I keep hearing from the public is that when that was originally drawn up, that there was intent for the resort tax to go toward park maintenance. That had been reinterpreted, so the parks budget has basically been decimated. And what tips do you have for us as a city to ensure that and assuming the resort tax is renewed, that the next ordinance cannot be reinterpreted other than what was intended? How can we tighten that up?
We're gonna have to go back to, like you said, the resort tax, because that's what it was probably what it was, what we're saying after that. So the tips for the city, the resort tax.
For the park, she has concerns about the interpretation of the park's maintenance being taken out of resort tax.
During the last audit.
Yeah, and I think if I'm tracking what you're asking, is that using those resort tax, funds on the intent of the original next election was for infrastructure and equipment projects, that kind of stuff. Part of the general operation of either parks, water, sewer, public works, law enforcement, that wasn't the intent of the original election. To cover those operations, it was for infrastructure.
If I may, I think part of the question was an acknowledgement that while people voting at the time understood or thought they understood that was going to be included, it has been clarified since then, and you were part of that process about what it does or does not cover. Do you have recommendations for what the wording would look like that would allow us to cover that in the future? Teresa, did I get that kind of close?
Well, how to tighten it up so that 2 years later it's not reinterpreted again.
What verbiage would you recommend so that we can include and protect that in the future? Any suggestions?
So you want to be able to like maybe amend the resolution to include some of those maintenance costs and operations with the resort tax?
As it comes up for reapproval, yes, there's a discussion about doing that.
And that's, I guess, that's a question for the city attorney on how you guys want to go about, because all we do is just like what it says. When we first went down this road, that first year we did the audit, I read the original resolution, the election, and then I started looking back and said, well, that's not what's happening now, and there was no amendment to that particular original resolution to allow those things. So if you want, I guess my only suggestion would be that you would want to include or be able to use the resort tax money for, just put that in your resolution and go to public hearing and amend the election verbiage, for lack of a better word.
And just for clarification, there was a large, rather lengthy legal opinion when this came up, when it was first passed, that I've spent a lot of time reading through. It's passed by the voters, and it can only be changed by the voters. So the council can't go in and say, the voters passed A, B, C, and we're gonna now make it include D, E. We don't have that option. There's points where it could be clarified. An example would be, it was a broad category of things that would be used or not used, and it was necessary for the city to say, well, this falls into that category or not, but we couldn't change what the boundaries were. So that will come
So you say the boundaries being, the parameters of what the legal, use of those funds was.
correct.
Right, and I think we can go back and have you can put the new verbiage in when you get it reauthorized. Yeah. And, maybe you can expand that new resolution or, the election verbiage to include some of the maintenance issues and whatever else you would want to include with it, and see if the public goes for it.
It's my understanding that the new resort tax board will be working on how that money's gonna be reallocated, and maybe the language of it,
Yes.
with Becky's approval.
Right. More questions? Well, I think we're gonna call it good, Kurt. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, any other questions? And I know that when we're there doing the audit now, I know Bonnie will let you guys know, anybody's welcome to come in and talk to us at any time, or call the office. You know, we don't need to wait till we get here or till a lot of time to answer questions. We field those calls on a regular basis from a number of our clients.
And I think they're gonna be here on the 22nd of August.
Correct.
Or the
Or
12th.
the 9th, 12.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
And we'll post that, so if anybody does have questions, they can come in and talk with
sure.
And I anticipate that from a council perspective, we will have some questions that we will probably be directing to our mayor and our clerk, but they may well reach out to you to help answer those questions. But I wouldn't
That's fine.
anticipate or expect you to be able to answer those directly, so I'm going to be curious to see like certain types of funds, like we saw some numbers earlier that are part of the presentation you may or may not have seen, that talked about, police budgets was one of the things that was called out. But I'd be curious if you have, again, not off the top of your head now, but if you have access to and can tell us, you know, as a percentage of the general fund, how do we compare to other things? Because, you know, and some data points like that I expect we will be asking our administration, and they may or may not reach out to you for assistance on that.
Yeah, and I think that and those are good questions, and I know part of that PowerPoint that I reviewed, there was some, like the city of Columbus, there was some other cities about your size that were compared in there, and I think the Montana League of Cities and Towns keeps statistics on that as well, that you can get from, you know, maybe parse off something that's relatively close to the size of the city of Red Lodge.
Thank you.
One more chance. Questions? Yes, Heather.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of touch on what was said earlier about, people saying things about the city mismanaging funds. I have heard that rumor myself, only I haven't heard it as this council is mismanaging funds, or these city employees are mismanaging funds. It's more of a cumulative over the years of maybe some mismanagement of funds. And, but it seems like that this is the group that has discovered, or has helped discover maybe some mismanagement or misallocation, maybe not mismanagement, but just funds going into accounts that maybe that's not where they were supposed to go to, and that you have discovered that, and you have opened that up to the public so that they know that, they're aware of what's happened. So I don't know that that's necessarily a negative thing. I think the positive is that you all are owning the explanation of what's happened to those funds. So I kind of wanted to clarify that, because I don't think that there's that much, in regards to you, I mean, things happen over the years, and so you guys are just kind of the ones that are owning it right now. And then as far as the city being really broke, and if we don't have any negative balances, that kind of means that we're not broke. But I know that you've discussed, like, as far as infrastructure, what we still need, and we have a debt. We have a big debt that we need to pay off. So I don't, it's maybe not that we're not broke, but we have debt. And that's something that I think that needs to be explained further as well. And how are we gonna pay off that debt? And how are we gonna come up with the funds to do the infrastructure that we need to do?
And that's why, in this year's budget, once it is okayed by council, that we are putting money towards paying that debt off.
And that's what people
And I
need
would-
to know.
And that's what we are doing right now. You know, I can't tell you what other administrations have done. And I think the reason that I stated about the rumors that go around about misappropriating funds or whatever they're talking about, it has a direct effect on our city clerks and our people at City Hall, being that they are taking ownership of what's being said out there. And that's what I said, if you were pleased, if somebody's saying that, say, well, when did that happen and who was in charge then? And narrow it down that way, not to drive morale at City Hall down.
Exactly, and I think that the city council has the responsibility of getting the word out as well, that that's not what you have done, but it's what you have discovered.
And I would add that all of our contact information is available online, and I have chatted with all sorts of folks. I will add, I won't answer questions on Facebook, I have other things to do with my time. I am occasionally aware of some conversations that happen by that, but I would say, if you've got questions, reach out to, I would say your council representative, but the reality is, once we're elected, we all represent everybody, so reach out to any one of us, whoever you feel you have the best rapport with, reach out to the mayor, and have a conversation, and we have thick skin, we get yelled at in this job, that's okay.
You know, and I need to say that all the audits that have ever been done for the city are on file here, so, you know.
Yes, and they're available, from the Department of Administration as well. You can get all the ones back to however long they've been keeping them, if you just ask for them.
You know, and I mean, if anything was done illegally or whatever, we're being accused of, it would show up in those audits and see what the correction was made.
Possibly, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for what other.
No.
Things have done with them, but, if there's something that they thought was appropriate, it would probably be in there.
If it was really, really bad, no matter how many years ago it was, it's Bill's fault.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'll make a comment, because I've sat in this room, I think, for now close to 27 years of budget hearings. And this conversation is not drastically different than any conversation that's happened before. And we've always had this propensity to try and blame the people before for the troubles we're in now. And I would say if our predecessors, and having sat here watched this happen, if they've made mistakes, what I would say is that there has been continually, for a very long time, a reluctance to raise taxes in our community. And we have failed to try and reconcile our desire for capital improvements with our desire not to raise the money for it. The second thing,
mutually exclusive.
yes, the second thing that we've had is a desire to keep water and sewer rates very low, and that broke about 4 or 5 years ago when we discovered that we could not continue, and I might be wrong in the timing, continue to get grants for water and sewer if we didn't have our water and sewer rates at a certain median level. And but for years and years, we tried to find other ways of funding all kinds of things that we did. And that our desire to keep our costs low have led us to a point where we've deferred a lot of maintenance within the city. I've read a lot of the audit reports over the last 27 years, and almost every one of them is glowing. There have always been points, as every audit will have, of things that can be changed, and different auditors want different things sometimes. And so sometimes you'll have one auditor say you need to do one thing, and you'll get a different auditor, and they'll say, we recommend doing something slightly different. None of that is bad, it's just a different approach. You get the same thing with legal opinions. The reason we have lots of lawyers is that legal opinions vary sometimes, right? And that's okay. It doesn't mean that we've had bad councils. It doesn't mean we've had anybody doing anything criminal or mismanaging funds. Those things about resort tax being wasted have been going around our community since the resort tax started. But no one has ever been able to say it was this expenditure on this date for this amount that I thought was bad. They're always a nebulous piece. And so I think as a community, we have an obligation to show respect for our members who sit at this table, the people who have the desire to actually show up at the meetings, which is a very small percentage of, this is one of the largest even budget discussion meetings that I've ever seen. And I think that you know, you guys are doing a good job, I think our auditors are doing a good job, and we as a community have to decide what we want. Do we want streets with potholes, or do we want streets without potholes? Do we want fire service? Do we want police protection? What do we want, and then what do we want to pay for that? And those are hard discussions to have.
And that's exactly it, that's the analogy, is that you have to decide what you want. And Red Lodge is not unique in a sense that the communities have deferred that infrastructure maintenance for a long time, and you know, you get these cities like the city of Louisville, the city of Mountain city of Glendive, who have taken on $15–20 million in debt because they just couldn't push it down the road anymore. And you know, you guys have debt. I remember I heard somebody say something about the fact you have debt. You may not be broke, but you have debt. Well, that's factored into, if you take a look at the financial statements, the debt is factored into the overall, I guess, debt position of the city, and you're still positive. Even with that debt, you're still positive. So that has actually been calculated into the net position calculation.
Kurt, I'm glad you addressed that, because that was my next question to you. What, in your opinion, is a normal percentage of debt when we're talking about the total city budget and the annual debt service? Is there a sweet spot? Is there a norm? Does it vary city to city? Do you have a recommendation?
It varies city to city. Now, in the governmental funds, let's say like with general fund, there are debt caps. You can only borrow so much, and that's statutory. Now, the enterprise funds, that's where the bulk of the borrowing comes in, is to borrow, and they won't lend you the money unless, that's why you guys had to raise your rates a number of years ago. They won't give you the grants, and they will not lend you the money if they don't think that your rates are high enough to pay them back, right?
Correct.
So it just, and as far as like a normal, it just kind of depends, you know, like, the city of Glendive just put in a new wastewater treatment facility that was around $20 million. And now they're they're going with a new water treatment facility that's going for $16 million. And that's entirely debt units. So, you know, they've got enough revenue to make that work, apparently, because the state needs some money for that. And that's not bad, I mean, especially at the rates that they're lending them to you at. You know, they're only at couple points, but.
Well, and unless I missed something, when we talk about debt, we have debt in water and sewer, but there's almost no debt in general fund, is there?
I think that's what he said is the enterprise.
No, I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed something, because we have some debt in our enterprise funds, but we have almost no general fund debt whatsoever.
Right, but I said there are some statutory, you can only
Yeah,
go so high.
it's basic.
In those particular funds, and then the enterprise funds are a little more flexible, provided that you have the revenue stream, the user charges are high enough to fund it.
There may be some things, Tom, that don't necessarily qualify as debt, but qualify as pre-promised or pre-allocated.
Leases.
Vehicle leases comes to mind. Like if we've got a vehicle, you know, that's not really debt, but we've already promised that money for the next 3 years. Same effect.
A vehicle
Well, you
lease
mean
is-
like for a purchase, like
Yeah.
new vehicles? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just budgetary, you can budget for those, the capital acquisition of, you know, it's like a improvement plan. I mean, you have to look 5 years out, on equipment, requirements you have, because then you can plan for it, set some money aside, you know, put a 50% aside, so it's just budgetary planning, that's important.
Is there a general asset allocation plan for the future for the city?
I'm sorry.
General asset allocation
Plan.
plan.
Capital improvement plan.
Cap improvement,
Yeah.
infrastructure
Improvement plan,
improvements,
yeah, say, here's some replacement stuff.
and how many years is it out
Well,
into
we're
the
going
future?
to replace this stuff at some point. So either we start setting from the aside, or we, you know, so you're not surprised and living in here. There are avenues at the city through those kinds of improvement funds that set money aside, and I guess save it for the days when you're gonna replace a piece of equipment 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road.
We're working on the new capital improvement plan right now.
Right, and that's important, those, I mean, that's important.
Sure.
And
Impacts
we
debt.
talked about maintenance districts. You know, those particular maintenance districts are a very effective tool at keeping your infrastructure, you know, your streets, curbs, and everything up to speed. And that's what the public sees, is that their streets are nice, and, you know, they can kind of put a direct correlation between their tax dollars and their streets, right?
Mary?
Right when I came in, and I came in late, and I'm sorry about that. But Bill, you were saying that the resort tax is for large capital improvement projects. And I've heard the auditors say that that's when they started 2 years ago, they said, you know, we're gonna have to move some of these things out of resort tax because that's for capital improvements projects. I'm wondering if vehicle leases are covered under that resort tax definition of the capital improvements projects of the infrastructure. Would that be something, you know, multi-year leases for vehicle payments for various departments? Is that something that the resort tax should be covering, or is that something that the general fund and enterprise fund should be covering, depending upon the use of the vehicle or equipment?
And then are you asking me that, or
I'm
Bill?
asking whoever can answer that.
So is that like, as the current resort tax laws are?
As it is now, as he reads the current resort tax, or is that something that we need to look at for the next resort tax committee?
Just, memory serves, the current, at least the Red Lodges, resort tax election was for infrastructure and equipment, is that correct?
It was?
Does that
Yeah.
sound right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
it
I don't
was
think
for
it was specific to, like, that it had to be public works equipment.
So let me make it more specific. In your interpretation, can we currently lease new police cars from our resort tax fund?
And make the payments from the resort tax?
Yes.
I think that would be fine. And I'd have to have the city attorney, but I would go back and look at that original election, but I think that would be fine. We're already doing that with some equipment in the utility funds, right?
What? Yes.
And so
Yeah,
like
it's
that
not
was
just
something
something
that we
coming in
just
utility funds.
go to work. With a piece of equipment, I mean, I can see that with a straight face, you can say, yep, that's a piece of equipment, and whether we leased it or purchased it outright, we're making the payments, and the resort tax is going to that piece of equipment. And I think that would be fine, but where we were running into the issue was the resort tax being spent on operations, salaries, and maintenance, that kind of stuff.
So equipment is a separate category, not just, it wasn't necessarily, it's infrastructure, equipment, as opposed to infrastructure equipment.
Right, infrastructure, I think infrastructure and equipment is what I remember.
So it doesn't have to be just public works equipment?
No, that's, I don't remember it being that specific.
No, there's a specific piece that allows it for emergency services.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you go back and check that, make sure I'm not all wet, but I don't remember it being specific to just public works equipment.
My recollection was that's like a second version that passed like 1 year later or 2
No,
years
it was
later.
later. 10 years later.
Yeah, it's just like 10 years ago.
I'm old, time just compressed.
It was like 10 years ago, but it was 10 years later.
But was, I don't know, okay, so that was voted on?
Yes, it was voted on.
And that had to go to the public to be voted on, because that's who passed the original, and that's the only one who has the right to change it.
Yeah, it was a suggestion. The resort tax legislation requires a 5-year review, I believe, and it was at one of those reviews that change was suggested. It went to the vote and passed.
Yeah, 'cause it had been amended from the original, election.
Kirk, I got one more subjective, similar question for you. What percentage of the total city budget should be in the reserve fund / emergency fund / rainy day fund?
Well, that's up to you guys.
I know, I understand. What,
But there's
what do you see?
statutes, you can only go so high, it's 50%.
6% is the cap?
Reserves can be.
Is that enterprise funds?
50%.
50%.
Yeah, there's no reserve restriction in the enterprise fund. When I say that, it's because the budget is not statutory. You have a managerial budget, but you're not bound to it like you are the general fund. And there's a if you go over budget in the general fund, there are statutory consequences for that. In the enterprise funds are not. You can exceed those budgets. So as far as reserves, reserves have to be high enough, obviously, to fund your operation. The point of reserves is to fund your operation from the end of the year, say like the beginning of the year, July 1st, until the taxes come in November. That's why most people refer to this, because the money come in that particular time frame.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just going through this budget. Is the enterprise funds in here?
Water and sewer.
That's the enterprise fund, water and sewer?
Solid waste.
Yep.
Okay.
Just water, sewer.
Are loan balances including interest? I'm on your website here and I'm looking at infrastructure loans. That includes interest and principal. And it's about 10 million plus?
Are you talking the balance,
Yeah.
where you are talking about the budget to pay the debt service for the current year?
Total.
The total. The
Total pay down.
Yeah, the total number as far as debt that's on your balance sheet, that's just the principal portion.
Not interest. Okay, so I just heard both and I'm just hearing it's principal only?
I think you're looking at something different.
The total debt service is $10,600,000.
That total debt service requirement would be principal and interest, and that's a budgetary issue, not like a financial statement issue.
Right.
Any debt outstanding that's on the front of those financial statements is the principal portion only.
And if you look at the capital improvements plan and find that out there was a spreadsheet that Jim had prepared that does actually show a principal column and it does show an interest column, and it's very clear that that's what's there. So we do have that online available.
Yes,
Yeah, I see per annum.
In the audit report as well, in the back, in the notes, we schedule that out in 5-year increments, so you know what the principal portion is and the anticipated interest portion also. So we schedule that until the end of those bonds, for those notes are finished.
Heather.
I think too, when discussing that people ought to know that you all are working on consolidating and getting the interest rates down and payments down, and I think that's good information for folks.
I think that happened before you came in.
Oh,
It was
okay, I'm
discussed.
sorry. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's worth repeating.
Yeah. Positive.
Anything else for Kurt? We'll let you go, Kurt. Thank you.
All right, well, yep, please make sure you call, and, yeah, if anybody has any questions, please let us know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care.
Disconnected.
Anything else? Yes.
Mayor, I have a question, and this is maybe a little bit, we have a working session tomorrow on budgets, and again, I don't know that it's necessarily it's to allow for proper prep. One of the things that was mentioned, and we didn't dive into it more, but I've heard a couple of different references to it, is, you know, what do we collect in the way of mills compared to equivalent cities? That's one of the data points that I didn't necessarily see on that spreadsheet. And then a second one into that is kind of what percentage of the budget do we spend on that? One of the things that I hear consistently, and I will use Chief Wells and our police department as an example, just because it seems to be the one that's getting a lot of airplay. You know, how much police is the right amount of police? And I'll give you my off-the-cuff answer. The easy answer for me is the citizens of Red Lodge are entitled to absolutely whatever level of coverage of police that they're willing to pay for. And so if we decided we wanted to have 20 officers around the clock 24/7, and the citizens of Red Lodge had that conversation and said, yes, please taxes, we want to pay for that, I have no problem with that. One of my concerns and issues is it feels like there is some services that we have increased over time, and we've done so at the expense of others. So I will use parks as a little bit of example. Over the last few years, and this is not a negative, this is just an observation, we've seen law enforcement as a percentage of the general budget go up, and our parks budget for last year was, if not zero, pretty darn close. And I have a list that I'm kind of compiling and building that's just a Dave mechanism to say, as a taxpayer, what do I expect to get for my property taxes? And so I have water, sewer, trash, a basic level of police services, some basic fire services, basic EMS, then there's some administration services, legal services, streets, parks, libraries. There's a list.
Can I chime in there?
Uh-huh.
Water and sewer does not get taxes. You
Right,
know
no,
that-
those are separate utility funds, but.
Right, but you're putting that into a list for tax, what people
Well,
want, what they're.
just said, what do I get, yeah, okay, and that's fair, so I appreciate
I
that,
just
so.
wanna make that clear, that water and sewer does not receive any tax.
And so, my concern is, and kind of where I'm going with this, and what I'd like to have the department heads prepare is, I will tell you from my position, I don't want to see anything completely starved going into this next budget. So I hope we don't see a budget that says, yeah, we're not going to put any money into maintaining our parks that we already have that's out there. Because I believe that our taxpayers have an expectation that there's a level of coverage that's there. One of the things that I would like to see from all of our department heads is a menu of services. So for think of any restaurant in town I walk into. I can get a steak, I can get a burger, I can get a chicken. The steak costs me this much, the burger costs me this much, the chicken costs me this much. And I would like for our department heads to come and say, I can offer you police coverage X, or police coverage Y, or police coverage Z, and here's how much each one of those menu options cost. And I'd like to be able to have a discussion about what services we get so that we can say, I want this level of and fire is one that we've taken out. They're in a constrained budget. In the past, we've put that in as a solid mill, so that's kind of a constrained budget, and it kind of helps. I don't think, and I hope my comments aren't translated as, I think we're spending too much money in any one thing. It's just a recognition that everything is a trade-off. And so we have to realize what we're getting for here. You know, if I'm gonna go in for dinner, am I gonna have dessert? In which case, I may not get the steak and lobster up front.
Chief Wells.
I would like to address the council. It seems odd that the police gets caught up a lot in the services that we're doing. I think that if you look at the budget slide that she had, we're under budget of a couple years ago. So we've done very well as far as doing it. I think if what you do is you look at the 40,000 I brought, it even lowers it even more. So you want different services and different practices. This is what I want to explain. Police is a different business than any other business, and I know there's a lot of business owners here in this forum today. Police is different. We have 2 officers right now that are employed that recently I just started getting them put to work. Police, you have to train 6 months before, and you want them trained 6 months before you put them on the streets. And so I have 2 officers this year. So really, in reality, I'm paying for 1 officer all year that I don't get to use, because 6 months and 6 months is a year. They are with another officer, they're at the basic academy, and they're getting trained. So out of that, that's required by law, is to make sure that they're properly trained and so that our community feels safe with the officers that we have. The other thing I want you to understand on the slides, on Columbus and West Yellowstone, they do not get 24-hour coverage. I feel it's very important, and I'm gonna show you very, very soon why I feel it's important to have 24-hour coverage. The one thing that you have to realize is we feel very safe, and we're kind of a product of our own success. We get kind of dinged because we're successful, because you don't know all the crime that happens in our community. There's a lot of crime that happens in the community, and we just had a trial just not too long ago about a person in our community killing another person in our community, violent crime. I want to remind you that there's things that happen that you have no knowledge about. 2 months ago, officer on, no one else on, middle of the night, gets called with Roberts because the county couldn't respond in time. A person got hit in the head with a hammer. The person thought that he killed the other person, and our officers responded to stop any further violence and apprehend that guy before anything else could happen. A month ago, we had a domestic outside of the city limits. A domestic where a person was stabbed. Our officers responded and stopped any further violence. Now, I've heard different things about not having 24-hour coverage, but this is the one thing I'm very, very passionate about. And that passion is the fact that our officers deal with a lot mentally. There's a reason we have a 20-year retirement. Studies are now showing that police officers are going PTSD 2 times our vets that are coming back per capita. There's no help for our officers. We don't get workman's comp or PTSD. We're expected to put a bandage on and go back out and do our work, and we do. Doesn't mean that we don't have the issues or the problems. Suicide is very, very high as a police officer. Read the statistics. So you may want to cut services, and you think, well, it's okay, well, I don't need 24-hour services. So my officers, the only place, because this job is 24/7, even when we're out of uniform, we still see and confront people that maybe we've arrested and maybe not real big fans of the police officers because we've made an arrest on them. We have to be on guard 24/7, not like a lot of other jobs where you get to go home, hang up your hat, and forget you even worked that day. We don't get to do that. The only safe place that our officers have is to go home and put their head on the pillow. And now I'm hearing talk of calling my officers out, our officers out, in the middle of the night, waking them up and saying, hey, you got a call, you got to get there. They have to wake up in the middle of the night over in their sleep cycle. They have to get dressed. They have to go to their patrol car. They have to respond to the emergency that's taken place. So it may be a savings cost to the city, but I want to play an actual what your savings cost the citizens of Red Lodge.
Before you go there, let me jump in a little bit, because the tone that I'm hearing tells me that I didn't do a very good job of articulating my question. Because it's not a negative and it's not an attack at all, but you did say one thing that I thought was right on. You said, I think we need 24-hour services. And I think one of the things that I would like, as we be able to go out, that's the menu options. We think 24/7 is a ribeye, it's wonderful, and it'll cost us this. We can offer something less. We have basic police services that we do something like West Yellowstone, and it would cost this, but here's why we don't think it's a good idea. That's what I'm saying, is I want to be able to say to our voters, here's option A or B. And the reason is actually, if everybody says, you're right, 24/7, that Delmonico ribeye is the way to go, then we have the ability to go and say, it's going to cost a little bit extra. And we have the ability to get you the money you need to do that.
Okay, so I apologize if you think that this is addressing you. This is not. This is addressed, I've heard it from several people and rumored, not heard personally, from other council people on this council about cutting services of that nature. I've not heard of cutting any other services in the city. Police department and law enforcement seems to be the topic where we can cut. So, middle of the night, and I'll tell you this, as a detective in the world, listen to jail calls all the time. The criminal element in our communities talk. They know exactly. I have heard, hey, if you're going to go do some robberies, go out to Stillwater County because they have 0 law enforcement at 3 o'clock. Guess what that says? Open for business, criminals. Open for business. Go ahead. Highway Patrol is done at 2. Sheriff's Office sometimes is done at 3. Red Lodge PD, done at 3. No law enforcement in the community go ahead and take advantage of our citizens. Right now, we live in a very safe community. 7th, ranked by the FBI, 7th in Montana. 7th. That didn't happen by accident. That happened from persistent law enforcement, from our guys, our patrolmen, going out and working their tails off, making sure that we can live in a safe community where we don't have to lock our doors. If you want to see your property values in this town go down, that criminal element will come up. Look at what Billings has right now. They wanted to save in their law enforcement. They stopped hiring. Do you know that if you go to Billings right now and you have a car that is stolen, you're going to be lucky to get an officer to do it, because they tell you, go down to a private citizen and have them take the report. That doesn't happen here. You get services. We call Red Lodge Police Department. You get services here. We care about this community. We invest in this.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I gotta go.
And I'll tell you another thing. This is the real cost. At 4 o'clock, when there's no one to respond, and I've got officers living 5 miles out, by the time they get dressed, get in the car and respond, this is a call from a 12-year-old girl, I'm sorry, an 8-year-old girl, name is Lisa. And I need to apologize, turn this up.
And we're assuming this is all a legal and safe conversation to share, I trust you.
This is from our community. But this is what we hear. And your decision to save money is what my dispatchers have to listen to for 20 minutes while it's going on. So this is not even 2 minutes. This is not 2 minutes. What happens is she's taken off the phone by her stepfather. That's not even 2 minutes. Do you think the Deluxe Police Service matters to her? I think it does. And so I'm very passionate about it because we have to hear this. We have to listen to this. And some of the things I'm hearing is having some of my officers respond from a dead sleep, getting dressed, respond at high speeds in a patrol car, responding to this, which is 20 minutes. And if there's one thing that we learn is that violence happens quick. And if we can't get there quick, more violence is going to occur. So I realize that's rough to listen to. But that's what you're asking us to do on a daily basis.
And to be fair, and again, I apologize because it feels like I failed to articulate my question, but I believe that to provide the level of coverage which you recommend, and I'm not saying I disagree, and the people that I'm hearing, I don't say disagree, it costs money, and that money has to exist to do it. I think if we can say, I can offer police package A or I can offer police package B, that we can get, you and I have had conversations where, and I don't think there's anybody here, and you're aware of my situation, my son's a police officer, so it's not like I'm oblivious to this by any means. I don't ever want to send an officer out that's not absolutely equipped as best as possible, that has the best in equipment, that has the best in protection. His number one job, as far as my concern, is to go home to their family. I have no questions with that. The concern that I have is if we assume that's the only service that we're gonna provide, if we use all of the money for that, then we pay for it in other elements of town. And I'm not saying that I'm saying, oh, police or library or police or parks. What I'm saying is, I don't know that the amount of taxes that we collect, and this will be another part of the conversation where we just, wow, what are our mills compared to other cities? What are our taxes compared to other cities?
That was all a handout I gave you.
No, I know.
Why are we questioning that?
But what I'm saying is, well, because we do have more officers, and it's not a questioning, it's just, we may need to get more money for you to be able to do the job, and I want to be able to provide
From my
that
understanding,
information.
Dave, I'm sorry, Councilman, the mayor has presented a balanced budget. And we as department heads, sitting down with the mayor, have worked very hard to take that into account. This slide, I hear nothing about how much money the police department costs. 11% of the total money collected by the city of Red Lodge. It ultimately is up to you. You know, when I hired on here a year ago, I had nothing but, we wanted to see changes, we wanted to provide security, and we're doing that. We're providing changes, we're providing security. We're protecting people who can't protect themselves. We're going into situations that most people wouldn't go into. You're asking me to send one officer into a bar fight by themselves. By themselves.
I don't remember asking that question. So
Well, by cutting people, that's what you're asking.
And I haven't made the suggestion or comment that we cut people, to be clear. I've just said, and maybe another way to phrase it is, if we told you you had 500,000 to run a police department, what would it look like? If we told you you had $1 million, what would it look like? If we told you you had $1.5 million, what would it look like? I just want to be able to, that's kind of what I want to be able to explain to people.
So, you said you're not cutting a budget. I just want clarification from you, since it seems like we're having a dialogue. If we cut the police department, what should I cut?
I don't have all of that information, and first
It
off,
is in front of you.
and I've had it now for just over an hour, so, but I'm not,
We've had the
hold
budget since
on.
Friday.
I'm not asking you to cut. I'm not going to ask you to cut, and to me, I'm not gonna tell you, cut this, cut that, that's not our role, that is the department heads that we absolutely trust you guys to do, and when I'm running business, and here's my department, they don't tell me what to cut, they say, this is your number, make it work. But I'm also accustomed to providing something that says, this is what I would do with this much money, this is what I would do with this much money, and this is what I would do with this much money. One of the things that was in the slide that we saw is that, and I'm using it just because it's a clear example that you brought up, is some of the other areas don't have 24/7. I'm not saying we shouldn't, and I think you give a really good case for why we have 24/7. If I have any concern or complaint at all, it would be that about 5 or 6 years ago, to my understanding, and as I watched it, and I was a part-timer then, but we've not always had 7x24. The part where I think a mistake was made is that we said, rather than serving hamburgers every day, we're gonna serve steaks every day, and we didn't change the price on the menu. That's what I think is our problem is. And so I think we goofed a few years back when we said, would you like this? Let's have a law enforcement district where we charge some additional money because we realize that we're going to now give some more services than what this town has historically had. And I think we missed an opportunity that when we changed the menu choice, we should have changed the menu price. And so how do we, what I don't want to do is eliminate all the other departments because of it. I just, like I said, if anything, I feel I clearly haven't articulated because I'd like to get you the money to do that. Now, having said that, I'm one guy. It's the voters who should say, yes, we want those services, and yes, if it costs us more, we're okay with that.
So, not to debate it, and like I said, I'd love to sit down and have a discussion, and I'd offer that to any councilperson or any community.
And you're always good with that.
I would love to sit down and discuss anything. I have an open door policy. I would love to discuss it. Public safety is something that the community enacts and enables the city to look at. And I've heard nothing about everything, always asking for more money from the community, and that's, I guess is your answer, so.
I think the only reason you get mentioned is because you are I think you're bigger than Parks, so I think when you feel like you're under a spotlight a little bit, it's just because you are a bigger department than some.
Thank you.
Rod?
Ron Bastian, most of you know who I am. There's so many things I want to say. We'll start out with what does a low-budget police department look like? Let's go back to 1983 when I hired on as a police officer for the city of Red Lodge. I was provided with 2 pairs of pants and 2 shirts. Everything else you see him wearing, I had to buy out of my own pocket, out of that paycheck, even my badge. Okay? I had to drive a car. The new cars came with 150,000 miles to start, and generally bald tires. Okay, so that's what a budget police department looks like. It's not safe for the officers, it's not safe for the community. And we go way into that, but just think about where that was at in 1983. We're also 24/7. It was 24/7 before I hired on to the department. So it's not a new concept. So if you think it's just happened recently, you're incorrect. So, and that call, I've been there. It's not pretty and it's not fun. And it is emotionally stressing. Probably a tear to my eye sitting here, and that was 30-some years ago. Okay? So, one of the things I'd like to ask the council to review is before the resort tax, how big were the departments? And how much were we spending on each of the departments? And how have they changed? Not just the police department. 1983, 5 full-time officers, 2 basically full-time, part-time officers. Hasn't changed a lot. We haven't added a lot to the police department as far as personnel. So the concept of it just keeps getting bigger. We need to go back and see from the 80s how that, how has it really changed? Not just the perception, but also with the city, office. There were 2 gals that worked there in the 80s. How many people worked on the city works department back in the 80s? Just questions that I think focus on the biggest budget, which is the police department. It looks like the easiest to cut, but bad things have been happening in the dark for a long, long time, and they're only getting worse. It's not something that, I want to be an officer today without 1 of 2 things. Someone that's going to be able to back me up when things go bad, or a police officer. I was a canine officer. I didn't have a lot of problems because they respected the dog more than they respected me. Okay, so not saying that we need to go get dogs for every officer, but I'm just saying it's a different world out there. There was respect for officers in the 80s. There's no respect for the officers now. So, but review all all the budgets, see how all of the departments have grown in the last 20 years, and try and determine the level of service that we need and why we need it, what we need. Okay? So that's my 2 cents worth.
That was worth about 50 cents.
First of all, I'd just like to say that I'm gonna repeat myself, but I think this is why it's so important to have a town hall meeting. Is that people don't realize the fact that people are moving to Red Lodge from 60 miles away because we're so safe. They know that we're safe, they know we have 24 hours coverage, and they're coming here from Billings, 60 miles, because they can't live in Billings anymore because it's so unsafe. And I also know some people in Billings that work in law enforcement, and they have home invasions now where people just come in your home while you're in it. And those people get arrested, and within 24 hours or less, they're back on the street. Because there's so much crime, there's no room for them, and that's pretty serious stuff. And I will say that Rod might have been one of the police officers who came to my home when I had a home invasion here in Red Lodge. And had they not been on call 24/7, that could have been pretty ugly. So I appreciate the police officers. The other thing that I guess is more of a question, well, first of all, is that, Rod, when you just said no respect for the officers, I would agree that maybe there are some people that have no respect for the officers, but the other side of that is how the officers present themselves to the public. So people might feel like they need to be a little bit more friendly, a little bit more door knocking so that we know who you are, those kind of things. But I don't know, I truly don't know anybody that doesn't have any respect for y'all. And then my question though is, when you mentioned about the training and how long it takes, can we hire officers that are used?
Experienced is the word, experienced.
I thought you needed to lighten it up a little, okay?
So, yeah, I would love to have used officers. I would love it. So, but this is the problem. We pay our officers $20.50 to start. If you can't live in Red Lodge for $20, and I want my officers to live here, because when you live here, you're invested in the community. We tried to get a $2 an hour raise. It's not in the budget, so it got dropped. Mayor and I, we sat down, we understand that. It got dropped. Because we realize that the budget is important. So are my officers. I currently have a position open. Sent out 38 letters of people who have indicated in the state of Montana that they want to be a police officer. Out of the 38 people that I sent letters out to, none of them were used officers. Okay? Because they're at high demand. Billings will pay them starting $25 an hour, and if they're used, $5 in their salary, which would put them over $30 an hour. They're going to go to work for Billings. Better benefits. They'll pay for education. They pay for a lot of things that we can't afford here. So out of that 38 people that I sent applications out to, the deadline is the 25th. I'm competing with all of the state of Montana. Do you know how many applications I currently have in my inbox right now? Either emailed or mailed to me. 0.
Again, this is why I feel like the town hall meeting is really important, so that people understand where the money is being spent and where it needs to be spent. And I also feel that maybe that we, I don't know, we, you, whatever, is pushing the fact that Red Lodge is, if I were a police officer, then I would take a $5 pay cut to come here versus working in Billings, for sure.
So Officer Hoppy, who just recently graduated the academy, I'm starting to get used to work out of him now. So after 6 months, I'm finally getting some work out of him. And out of that, out of that 6 months, he chose, he had an offer to go to Laurel, which paid $3 an hour more than what we are here. But he loves his community and wants to be here. Currently looking for a house, but with the paycheck that he's trying to get, he can't afford it right now. He's not done looking. He is committed. He's driving currently every day and every night from Park City. Excited to be here. We can't afford to live here. So, we have done what we can to try and make it as efficient as we can for the citizens and provide the best coverage we possibly can for this community. And I am committed to this community, to be here, and to make a change, and make it safe. I'd never want to become crime-ridden, where property values go down, where people feel like they can't go. That is my goal, that's why you hired me. I'm committed to do it. I've got officers that are committed to do it. We've done something else to try and keep our officers here, because they can go other places and make more money. They can go to the Carbon County Sheriff's Office, start at $28 an hour, starting. No experience, $28 an hour, that's what they're paying. They're paying their dispatchers more than I'm paying my officers. $23 an hour to be a dispatcher there. So I lose them, I train them, I give them 6 months training. All of a sudden they become very valuable because now they're a youth officer. So these other agencies will pick them up. What I did when I got here, if I'm going to train you, I want a 3-year commitment. I have them sign a 3-year contract. If they leave, they can leave. But they have to pay back to the city of Red Lodge the training that it took to get them there. So we're doing what we can to try and retain our officers. Retention of officers, having them know the community members is very, very important. And so we want to retain them. We want to keep them.
Keep them from burning out.
Yeah, and burn out.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that, number one, I have 2 brothers that are in law enforcement, and I appreciate the work that you do, and I understand your frustration. I think that we are paying the price now, but we have a council and a staff that are ready to deal with it, of issues that have occurred over the last, in my opinion, the last few years. We haven't raised the mills in Red Lodge in never. And although I call it the curse of the resort tax, because we have resort tax, so everybody thinks we're flush with money. And we don't say no to anybody about things that the city's going to do. We need to have a big conversation with the whole community. This is just the start of exactly what are we willing to pay for. And we can't let the general fund go all to the RLPD, because we have other commitments that have to be made. But this community needs to realize that we have those commitments and we need to put up the money. So I hope that this is just the beginning of the talks. I know that we have talked about police safety district. We've heard talk about street district, lights district, the parks district. We can't just start not even nickel and diming, because some of those districts are going to cost a lot of money. We have to have a big conversation. What is the city responsible for? What are we going to pay for? And then get the community involved in paying for it and getting on board. I love your passion. I love your passion for what you do. I think that's important. But don't look at us as the enemy. We're not the enemy up here. We're here trying to do what's best for the whole community. And I think that this, just like I said, this opens up a conversation that we should have had years ago, in my opinion. I am one of those people that was a whistleblower, because there were funds that were being spent that shouldn't have been being spent the way they were being spent. And I paid the price for that. But I'm here and I'm willing to make it right. So let's fix it. Let's fund the city the way we need to and move on.
This whole conversation we've been having deserves its own town hall meeting at night when more people can show up.
Right. Just to clarify, when I talked about respect for officers, I know the people in this room respect the officers and they're very thankful for them. It's the people that the officers interact with that don't respect them like they do. When I arrested somebody, it was always, yes, sir, what do you need me to do, sir? Now it's, they give you the finger and they're ready to fight. Okay, enough on the police department. I've been listening to all these improvement districts and all, maybe we need to increase the mills, those types of things. Maybe we do, I don't know. But I've also heard the conversation that we need to be, Red Lodge to be more affordable for the working class people that come into town. Now every improvement district, every fee, every levy that gets increased, increases the cost of living in this community. And so, people like this, the unintended consequence of trying to fix the problem may be that we have a lot of weekend rentals now We may have a lot more later, when only people that can afford to buy property in Red Lodge live outside of the community and just want to come here and visit and have their own place while they're here. Something to think about. Every time you raise a fee or tax, it has a consequence. I have, right, it was significantly less. Now it's over $100 a month. We're right there. It's just set to go over 100. I can't include that anymore. That has to be added on, right? And every person that rents long-term has to add that. And to live here, we gotta pay a little bit more, but at some point, we're just gonna be a vacation rental villa, and there's not gonna be a community anymore. So something to think about.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch the replay, because I sure don't remember saying that I thought we ought to cut the police department. But I said something that hit a trigger somewhere. I just,
Yeah, it came out that way.
my comment is, we have a finite set of dollars, and there are things that people expect us to do. And if we decide the budget needs to go up, the way this works in the house, you know, and there's a household, something's going on, and a car dies, or we need something else, there's a conversation that goes on in the house that says, one of us has got to go get another part-time job, or one of us has got to, and if that's where, that's just part of the conversation we have, and it's not necessarily a comfortable conversation, but it is a conversation we need to have. Like I said, I really love Gold, because I don't remember ever saying anything, but like I said, clearly, and like I said, I appreciate the police department, I want to be clear about that. I appreciate Chief Wells, I have nothing but the absolute utmost respect for Chief Wells. We have had tons of good conversations, some we agree, some we disagree, they have always been respectful. And for those who will miss the private conversation later, I have absolutely zero concerns, that'll be a pleasant and conversation there, but I'm not saying we need to cut the police department, just to be clear. I just want to be able to communicate to our voters, here's what we have, and here's money, and here's what things cost, and if you want more, we can have more, but we may have to raise taxes, we may have to, I love the idea of what's been done with fire and EMS. They get a certain number of mills, they are a constrained budget. They don't have to come fight for budget every year. This is your budget, and if you can make it work, if you decide you want to give your officers a $2 or $3 an hour raise, if you decide you want to put free soda in the fridge because that's what's going to get them there, that's your prerogative as a department head to do that. I love our enterprise funds kind of already work like that. There's a constrained budget. Here it is. You go make it work however you think is the best way to do it. When you said, what do you want to have me cut? I don't want that job. I'm not the expert. I want to be able to say, hey, there's this option, there's this option, there's this option. I say, here, go, make it go and be good. And if we need to get more money, we need to figure out how and what's the appropriate way to do that. I'd love to get to a point that you don't have to have this conversation every year, let alone have it feel like it's a battle every year. I'd love to just say, here's your budget, make it work.
One more.
Can I just thank the city for putting all this information together? I try to stay educated on these things, but having the comparables really draws a picture. And I appreciate everybody in the room that stays educated. I think our job is to go out and talk to the Bar Talk people and stop the rumors that he's brought forward. It's up to us to get the information out there along with the help of the city, because it's not good for business. All this talk is not good for business of any kind. So thank you. This is great.
I want to say one thing. You know, some people in this community have been saying, we have to have a meeting, and we have to make it public. And so we did, and 20 people showed up. 20 people.
It's 2 in the afternoon on a Monday.
It's a tough time.
And you don't know how many you're watching it on TV.
We don't know. We won't know.
Also,
I think it's much better than I thought it was going to be, as far as the turnout.
Better at night though, than the council meetings. Usually it's worse. The council meetings are sure at night, so.